Okay, hello everyone. Hi, and welcome to our session today. Good evening, because I'm joining from this part of the world, and I know a lot of you are also joining from morning and evening. So, best wishes from wherever you're joining us from. And today we kickstart our second season of our SI Open Accelerator series. This year we already saw our first iteration, and it was quite an interesting, right? And we took some really interesting feedback and built on top of that. So this second iteration is really a step ahead of what we did earlier this year, and we hope that it gives as much value as we took in designing that. So welcome again. I am Asra. I am the host and facilitator of this session and all the sessions coming in this series. And we have Joss, who is my colleague and the founder of SI Network, and we both the host and facilitators. So I hope you really get used to looking at us, because we are going to be there from the end till the end. So I'm joining you all from Bonn in Germany, and Joss is joining us from London. Please take this time to maybe write to us and chat where you're joining us from. So it's always good to have the diversity that comes with the participation, and maybe you can connect with people from different parts of the world. I think that also facilitates perspectives and discussions, and it really influences the way we learn here. Okay, so the SI Open Accelerator series, it runs for about 6 weeks. We already had an info session a few weeks ago. So today we are getting started with the week one, where we are learning about the overall systems innovation overview and different methods that are employed in trying to understand the systems innovation process. And these are the guides and canvases that we are going to use in our program today. You can access to them. I will drop the link later in the chat, so you can reach out in the website and look at it later at your convenience. Before we get started, I would like to maybe let you all know that we are streaming online on YouTube. So you can always go back and watch this video if there is some place on this workshop that was a bit difficult for you to understand, or if you would like to revisit something to learn about it in more depth. So this is how the event board for today looks like. We have three main sections. The first one is we're talking about different methods. Then we're learning about different real-time case studies from different parts of the world, the organizations in which they are functioning and how they're applying this process of systems innovation. And then we will do a workshop, and that's the outro. Here is a section right down below the central part of the board is where you can actually put up a sticky and then write your questions. In between the event presentation, we will pause and we will take your questions whenever it arises. So let's all now meet here on the mirror board for this icebreaker session. I will maybe bring all of you to me, and I hope Joss has shared the link with all of you, so you can find me on the board. Okay, so just to give you a bit more of a depth of SI Open Accelerator series, this is for people who have a bit of understanding of what systems innovation is all about, and what are the different dimensions of the stages in which the systems change as the process happens. So here we are collecting the profiles of the participants who are joining us today. So maybe you can click on a dot of your choice, and then maybe put it in wherever you think is more suitable for your profile. I think I am somewhere here trying to learn and trying it out. And we also have Stan there joining me. I see only six of you are here. Maybe I will bring all of you again to me so you can find yourself on the right part of the board. Okay.
Yeah, maybe as you want to show them quickly, in case someone's new to the mirror board, just how to navigate. We will be using the mirror board in all the sessions we go forwards because they'll all be workshops. So definitely encourage you to follow the link, jump in. If you're not familiar with Mirror, maybe Ash will give you a 30-second crash course.
Okay, so for this one here, it's quite simple. You can just click on a dot there that's of your interest, the color that you like, and then just drag it to any part of the curve that you think your profile suits. Like I think that I'm here on the third stage, so I just put myself there. Um, so the second one that's really important for us for using the Miro board is pulling out a sticky and writing there. So there is this possibility of getting a sticky from the left side taskbar there. So to type in a sticky, it's quite easy. You just have to click on it and the cursor will appear like this. Then you can just gather your thoughts, say, hey or hello, or whatever the question is that you're interacting with on the sticky there. These are two key things that we will do using the Miro board on our workshops. As we go along, if there are any questions on the Miro board, we can still talk on the chat, or I can give you a brief introduction to it. Or whilst we are here, I would like to take your expectations and the ideas that you came to us to this event. So please let us know. What are you hoping to gain or explore through this series? And grab a sticky and then write your thoughts there. If you're done with it, maybe you can also just share your profile link here in these stickies down below, because we would love to know where you're all coming from, and it would be a good place for you to connect with different participants and just talk to them over the 6-week series that we are conducting now. As you all might know, that this event today will run for about 120 minutes, which is 2 hours. And I will hand it over to Josh shortly, who will walk us through the different methods. We'll give a brief presentation about the different phases of systems innovation and change. I'm just reading through the stickies that are seen on the board here. And I think it sort of really aligns with what we are trying to do at the Systems Innovator Open Accelerator series. We are really trying to explore the different tools that we have created over time at the network and explore how it can be applied to real-time challenges. And coming out of the SI Open Accelerator, we also hope that you will have really good outcomes of the understanding of how these toolkits can be applied to the real-life challenges that you're facing in your professional or project aspects there. Over to you, Josh, for the presentation.
Great, thank you very much, Ezra, and good to see everyone here. Yeah, do encourage you to drop in your links below, LinkedIn or to the website, the SI website, your profile. You can connect with others, but great to get started with our second Open Accelerator, and hopefully we're going to have you joining for the next 5-6 weeks as we learn about the tools and methods of systems innovation, and we help you apply them to the challenges that you're working on. And you get a better understanding of these ideas, tools, particularly the tools we'll be focusing on, and the overall methodology as we'll learn about today. But then you're getting a chance to really think about how these apply around a challenge, hopefully around the challenge that you're working on, and how to integrate them into your work. So really starting from the top today, which is what is all this systems innovation thing and why would I need it? How can it help us? What is it? Why is it? And how might we go about it? So really starting from the beginning. And I will grab the screen so that I can do that. And here we are. You will find this in the guide at this one here, right? So all of the sessions will draw upon content from the guides that we'll link to. Maybe you want to unlock those as well so that people can access them, and also from our toolkit, we'll share that with you as we go along. And today we're getting that high-level overview of what systems innovation is, very briefly in this first box here. We're then going to talk about our methodology for approaching this. We're going to look at different aspects of that approach, and then other organizations and how they approach this and how it kind of aligns with what they're doing. So in each session as we go through, we will be looking at we'll be having some ideas in each module as we go through the series. We'll be looking at some ideas, we'll be learning about tools, we'll be looking at examples, and then a lot of the time will be spent you people workshopping in your breakout rooms around the challenge, applying those. So hopefully that's what you came for, and I will jump in here, which is really starting with what is systems innovation, and quite a few ways of telling this story. I like to, take the words quite literally. It's about innovation in systems. It's a holistic approach to enabling innovation within complex systems. Um, and it's ultimately a set of ideas, a methodology, and tools for us to go and try and change systems, influence or guide change and transformation within complex systems based upon innovation methods and ideas and approaches. So it's a systemic approach. You're probably familiar with that already, as it tries to uh, take a comprehensive and overall holistic understanding of the nature of wicked complex challenges. I'll talk about wicked challenges in a minute. And in so doing it kind of contrasts with the more reductionist approach where we're focusing on improving or changing particular problems or aspects of the system. So this approach becomes very relevant when the challenges we're dealing with become complex. So complexity has a lot to do with this. And we call these complex challenges wicked problems. How many people have heard the idea of a wicked problem before? Put your hand up, a digital one or a real hand? Okay, is that everyone? Lots of people. Okay, you're very smart. So again, that's an idea that has a lot of ways to understand it. There are many aspects to wicked problems. You can contrast them to tame problems. Tame problems, there is a problem really, and there is a solution. And for every problem, we can find a cause, something that's affecting that and creating the problem. And by isolating that problem and analyzing it, we can understand the cause of it, the things that are affecting that system and causing that outcome. And then we can derive a plan or a course of action to go and change those influences, those causes, so that we fix the problem. And that creates a problem solution framing that we're very familiar with because it's how we approach most things. And it makes a lot of sense when we talk about simpler problems like the light bulb in your house not working. There is a problem. We can analyze that. We figured out it's the light bulb. We go and change the light bulb and we fix the problem. That's a simple problem. Many other problems are not like that. Most of the most critical and pressing and important challenges in our lives and in the world today are actually fundamentally complex, which means they emerge out of complex systems and they are interrelated and interdependent with many other systems. They're embedded within a network of interacting different systems and thus cannot be isolated and analyzed and solved in that traditional way we approach tame problems or is relevant for tame problems. So these ones we call wicked, and they're essentially merging out of a complex system. Um, And we need to try and understand that complex system. If we just try and go and fix the problem, it may not, it won't create sustainable solutions. We need to actually understand the nature of the complex system and the interactions and so forth. And we need to take a much more holistic approach to how we go about influencing and making change happen in this context. So changing the problem with the light bulb, we can fix that through this linear thinking, reductionist thinking, where we focus on that problem and switch it out, changing our whole energy grid to a sustainable, renewable, decarbonized electric grid at a national scale or even at a city scale is a wicked problem. We can't kind of isolate one part of that and try and solve it because there are many multiple parts and its interrelation embedded within many other systems of governance, of finance, of environmental policy, of labor, and so many other factors, technology and design, and so forth. That we actually are operating in a complex adaptive system. We have to step back and really think about a much more holistic form of innovation and change in that context. Is this idea making sense to people so far? This idea of a complex adaptive system? And maybe you could put it in the chat for me. How are you feeling about that idea on a scale 1 to 10? You're all happy with this? 10 out of 10, you've got it perfectly. 0 out of 10, you have no idea what we're talking about.
We have all tens.
Okay, wow, you've got it. Maybe okay, very good. 9 out of 10. 10 out of 10, great. So yes, aspects of these wicked problems are multidimensional, interconnected, open-ended, unstructured. They cross boundaries. They have multiple perspectives on not just the nature of the problem, but also like what the right solution might be. There is no known solution. They're typically unique problems. We've never been here before. Highly complex. And really, they're systemic, right? They're not problems up here, the outputs of the system. They're really a problem with the system itself, right? Stuff down here, the roots and so forth. So Kate Simpson, who's part of Wasafari consultancy that works on systems change, she says when you try and work on a complex problem without considering the underlying condition, it's like shouting at a rotten tomato and just hoping it gets better. It will keep you busy, it will give you plenty to do, but it won't actually make much change. So it's often how we find ourselves in the world where we have a problem, an outcome, our health system's not working well, we have problems in our financial system, we have problems in our governance, and we try to fix those problems. We take these very linear approaches, trying to shout at this tomato to make it ripe again, when actually the issues are down here, they're systemic. I imagine many of you are familiar with this or have already kind of thought through this, but it really leads us to the idea that we have to dig into this complexity and embrace complexity and learn how to work with it, which requires a whole new toolkit, right? The linear approaches we know are very good if we're trying to change these tomatoes up here. If we really want to change the system out of which it's emerging, we need a new kind of mindset and set of methodologies and so forth. So that's the kind of innovation we're talking about. And it's pretty wicked, as the name says, and it's pretty complex. But we shouldn't, hopefully you aren't getting intimidated. Hopefully you're going to stay with us for this journey we're on, and off we go. How can we do innovation in that context? Well, it requires a couple of things. It definitely requires changes in thinking and changes in approach, because we're trying to change from innovation in parts to innovation in systems. And this is really a new frontier for us as human beings, really. We have thought about systems, we're part of systems, we've heard that word thousands of times, but we've never really developed a comprehensive, broadly across society and organizations, a good understanding of complex systems and how they work, and certainly not a good understanding of how to influence and guide change in a constructive, in a coherent, in a sustainable fashion to enable transitions, from one industrial age energy grid to a sustainable post-industrial age energy grid, from the education system of the industrial age that we know is working for us to something new. We've never figured out how to really do those kinds of transitions at scale in the way that's needed, and it's really a new capacity that we need. And it's this, capacity, innovation, moving beyond products and services to innovation in complex systems. And we can think about that in many ways. As I say, this is the normal kind of innovation pathway that's become very dominant in our world. It's very much reductionist kind of approach through which we create a lot of products and services and new innovations. And it's driven by a particular kind of modern era reductionist mentality and way of looking at the world, modern science and so forth. And we create new solutions to particular problems and we take them to market and we sell lots of products and we create startups and all of this. And we've done a lot of that. Hasn't necessarily really improved our quality of life and the systems we form part of and their resilience and their sustainability. You might argue it's actually kind of taking us in the wrong direction. So we're saying actually we need a different kind of innovation, this systems innovation that's really considering that system and bringing in this thinking from systems thinking that helps us look at the world in a new way. And then from that new way of looking at the world, derive a new kind of innovation that's actually about coordination and alignment across a broad network of actors to enable the emergence of new structures and outcomes in this system. So hopefully you're familiar with a lot of this. I just want to recap it because it's not, we're not going to be covering too much ideas. We do all that in our learning series, but just wanted to get us on the same page. And it will help us understand why our methods and tools are the way they are because they're coming from this kind of approach. So yes, as I talked about, ultimately it's about new ways of thinking because innovation is about ideas, new ways of looking at the world. And in that new framing, we find new ways to bring things together in creative ways that are going to create value and enable us to develop and grow new systems. So new ways of thinking, this complex systems thinking, and then new ways of organizing and bringing people together, collaborating and working together in enabling change and transformation in complex systems. So it's a big endeavor, but I believe many of us on this call would agree that it's one that we need to learn to do. And it's not going to happen overnight. We're going to have to build this capacity, this new kind of thinking awareness, and then methodologies and tools and how to work together. Should I take a break there, Azra, and we can take any questions if anybody has any?
I think there was one in chat by Dipanshu who asked, is time a dimension of systems change?
It's a dimension of almost everything. Do you want to elaborate on that, whoever posted it?
We also have, in the meanwhile, a question from George. Would you like to maybe unmute and ask this yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. So I was wondering, like, apart from understanding, seeing all the systems around our world, which becomes more complex over the years. I'm also wondering, apart from finding ways to structure those systems and map them, whether it's also important to find ways to manage that mental weight because seeing all those systems or those interconnected things is not always the easiest for our brains.
Yeah, it's
A
certainly
kind of philosophical question.
well, that's what we're getting to when we say new ways of thinking, George. We know that I think is often fragmented. It's this reductionist approach that reduces down and breaks out and separates out and so forth. And it doesn't help us in understanding all these relationships and interdependencies. And, what complexity is about the interaction between all these things, and the reductionist paradigm that we're so well schooled in doesn't help us when we think in this kind of nexus of interacting things, and that they're highly dynamic and they're interacting and adapting and evolving over time. And as exactly as you say, we do need this system thinking to really start thinking differently and start to, our thinking frames what we see. So systems thinking is going to help us see these networks and the way they operate these complex adaptive systems. And when we see that, we'll find new opportunities for innovation and adaptation. The problem is we're innovation and change, but often, we're taking this reductionist approach and we divide it up and separate it out, and that's not really helping us because it is this complex network. So we're taking approaches that are suited for simpler problems, and coming from the industrial age, plonking on these complex systems. They work to a very small extent, but they're kind of exhausting us and taking a lot of time and energy and not really getting us to where we want to go. So in new way, as you say, this networked view of the world is really what we need to start to understand them based on their own terms, the way they really are, and find new ways to work with them, instead of continuously plonking this reductionist kind of paradigm on them. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thanks, Josh. So we have one last question, maybe before we move on, if it's okay. It's under this section below, which is, why are decentralized network or systems more favorable or recommended?
Well, they aren't always. It's just complex adaptive systems are these large scale decentralized networks. They're typically so large that no one can really control them. So you need approaches that are representative of that, right? If we take the global economy or the global financial system, no one controls those sorts of things. There is no organization that really controls the global economy. And there probably shouldn't be, right? So we need an approach that's actually relevant for the nature of that system, and it will very likely be a decentralized kind of approach.
Mm. Thanks, Josh. I think the one who asked the question also is satisfied with your answers.
Okay,
Good, thanks.
great. All right, so let me jump into this then. So we'll take more questions down here, right? So if you want to post another question as we go along, just drop
Just another section right under the stream, long.
Okay, we've got another one there.
A lot more. Towards the end of the stream, we have a box for questions.
Okay, down here we've got a whole big box. Okay, well, feel free to put those in there also, right? So let me jump in here. And I'm going to have to get my power supply soon, but here we go. What makes for a systems innovation? So we're getting a bit more practical in terms of what do we actually do here? What does a systems innovation actually look like? If you want to learn more about the ideas, we've got lots of guides on the website. You can learn about those. We are learning more kind of on a practical level here in terms of the methods and so forth. So um, we're let's maybe start here with the kind of questions we might have. Some of the questions we have when we approach this are around trying to think differently, right? And that's going to require this systems thinking ideas, because we need to think more holistically. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab my power supply here. But we're going to have to think more holistically to help us move away from kind of linear thinking, as we just talked about, right? We also need to actually understand the system we're working with. So this is about mapping out, you maybe heard of systems mapping or systems inquiry and analysis. It's about understanding the actors, the factors, the interrelationships within the system. It's inevitable that we'll have to do that. We can't really intervene without a basic understanding of the system and how it works. So that's kind of the second part, second set of questions. We'll be looking at these now in a minute. There's also an aspect of change here, right? As you noted. And it's not just any, so we need to understand what we mean by that, what we mean by transformation.
Josh, sorry
it's
to
quite
pause you there for a minute. I think we lost
sometimes
you
a little
for a
bit
bit.
counterintuitive. Sorry, I'm here now. How's that?
We could hear you okay.
Yeah. Sorry, I was just plugging the power in. I'm back now. So, sorry, the connection should be good now. Talking about, we need to understand systems analysis, and then moving into transition design. So hopefully my connection's okay now.
We can't hear
Sorry,
you
is
if
it
you are
okay now, the
speaking something.
connection, Ashra?
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, apologies. Sorry. Yeah, I'm here. So, yeah, hopefully you caught that. Looking at transition design, understanding, transition and transformation, and um, how we grow and develop a new ecosystem of actors working together around the challenge. Maybe you want to grab the screen, Azra, it might help. Sorry, my computer's running a little bit slow here.
We are on my screen. Let me just follow you. Can you all see my screen? Just give me a thumbs up if you can. Okay, thank you.
Okay, is that a bit better now?
Yeah, we can hear you okay.
Yeah, sorry. Apologies, it was my power. Hopefully you caught those, different aspects here, kind of key questions you have when you go trying to do this work, right? How do we think differently? How do we think in systems? How do we understand complex adaptive systems? Um, how do we understand the factors, the actors that are constituting the current dynamic in that system? How can we think about change and transformation in this context? What does that look like? How do we move from the old system to a new system? How do we help that develop and grow? And how can we grow a network of actors working together around this challenge over time? So maybe you want to move on to the right there, Azra, just to say a few words about each of those. So this is it here. Yeah, if we start on the top left, it's really thinking about a different kind of awareness, right? An awareness of complex systems. So systems innovation is a product of an intentional process aimed at shaping changes within a complex adaptive system. This requires some awareness of the whole system. So we do have to do some work to encourage people to start to think more broadly, more holistically about the challenges and think more systemically about it and really move away from linear thinking, as we talked about. Maybe you want to go up to the left, top left there, that graphic just to the left of that there. It also requires, yeah, this kind of reflexive thinking, right? So starting to understand how our mental models are shaping how we see the world and how we go about managing and designing it, and thus the world we create. Often this kind of awareness around how our thinking and assumptions kind of influences everything we do is not present. And a lot of our challenges and issues come from our way of thinking and perpetuating that. So we've got to kind of unpack a little bit our reductionist assumptions and trying to change those to a more systemic approach. If we go over to the next bit on the left here, we're talking about systemic structures. This is getting to understand the system. If you go to the graphic on the right there, yes, this one, it's a model of a system, right? So ultimately we're saying what we're trying to understand is a complex adaptive system, whether it's an education system, a food system, or supply chains, or cities, and so on. We need an understanding of the elements and interrelationships and the actors and how this thing is generally kind of working, from which we can start to think about intervention points or these leverage points and how we might go and influence the system, where we might go and influence the system. We'll talk plenty more about that as we go along. So this is kind of the second part, mapping out, understanding the system, finding intervention points. If we go down a bit, it's, yeah, again, thinking about change now, right? Now that we understand the system a little bit, And as you can see there, Donella Meadows does encourage this. We all do, right? That before you disturb a system in any way, watch how it works, gain this understanding of it. It's a piece of music or whitewater rapid, fluctuation, so on and so forth. Learn its history, essentially try and learn how it works before you go and intervene. So that's the second part there, all about the systems inquiry and mapping. But ultimately, we do need to think about change because that's what this is about, and transformative change, which is different from linear change. So we talk about transition design here. We're talking about models and methods that help us understand transformational change, which is not incremental. It's this kind of simultaneous growth and decay, or you get this collapse of systems and at the same time new ones emerging. So it's that little graphic on the right where we're seeing something dying, but at the same time something new, a new system being born. And how can we understand that kind of a change process instead of the one on the left here, which is the one we're normally thinking about, which is much more to do with planning out change. Which doesn't help us very well when it comes to transformation. Maybe I'll stay going, and then we've got a hand raised from Yame, but I'll just finish here. Finally, we need to think about how we co-create and collaborate and build a network that's actually going to work together around developing, growing this new system. So this we call ecosystem building, and we're trying to move away from this very fractured and compartmentalized and siloed and project kind of approach to challenges, which is what you normally see when you go into an industry or wherever we have a wicked problem. Lots of organizations trying to solve that, to this more collaborative, networked ecosystem approach of the actors working together around the challenge in more networked, agile ways, and to really co-learn and co-create a new system. The changes we saw coming out of the transition that need to develop and grow over a period of time. So none of this happens, in short periods of time. It takes longer periods of time to really transform a system in this way. And this is some of the dimensions that are important for systems innovation. And it's not really linear in that way. It's iterative. Systems innovation should be a kind of agile, iterative approach, right? We can't plan the whole thing out. We need to adapt and experiment and iterate through these different dimensions. And just wants to lay that out. We're going to be exploring that as we go through the whole 6 weeks now. I'll show you in a minute after we take some questions about different organizations and the approaches they use based upon these different dimensions.
I think we can take your question, Yami.
Hello, yes, hi, thank you, yeah, for that. Yeah, no, mine is not really a question, it's just an observation that this almost feels like it's going against the current. Because I think if we all noticed it, especially now with the advent of things like climate change and also things like AI, especially, everything's speeding up. So this is now, given the complexity, given as we've already highlighted the systemic nature, the systemic nature of the challenges that have been faced. This is like you need to be almost like taking a step back, and you need to pause and you have to reflect. You also need to take a bit more time to actually internalize and get to grips with probably the tools. Each of those dimensions now almost have its own tools from the way you
Yep.
were describing. I mean,
Yep.
so yeah, and then the last thing is that now it's this iterative. You're stepping outside of the system itself, but you're observing it. So then now you almost, it sounds like you're almost having to engage with those within it or those who are
Yeah.
experiencing what's going on. So I'm just saying, yeah, it really sounds like it's countercurrent. It's going against the flow of how things are happening now.
Yeah. I mean, interesting observations. Your first one about the time scale here, and having to step back. Well, yes, it is. It does start from an observation that all these problems we have are not random things. They're actually a function of deeper systemic issues that are going on, that we actually don't need to just fix a whole pile of issues and speed up our fixing of those problems. We need to maybe slow down and look at the underlying systems out of which they're emerging and think about how to really work together to change those over a longer period of time. So there's definitely that observation and different kind of time horizon there for sure. So that's your first one. Your second point, there's different methodologies there for sure. Yep, and we'll look at those now. So do you want to remind me your second point, Yami, again, if you want me to pick up on that or?
No, yeah, and you picked up on it. It's like it really feels like each of those quadrants. I mean, to address each of those things, different tools are required, and you almost have to get to grips with each of those in each
Yeah.
of those different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that really need to come into focus. This is quite complex work. It's very much interdisciplinary too, right? It's not one approach. It's drawing upon many different areas, and many different tools and methods need to come together. And you have to be very adaptive and flexible, because this is highly uncertain kind of environment. You're working in a complex adaptive system where you don't really have control or any of this. You have to be flexible and adaptive and approach it from different angles. You know, these wicked problems, that they're never one thing, right? If we take a water crisis, there's actually multiple things going on behind it, or, you know, challenges in decarbonizing transportation. It's not just transport, it's actually interrelated with so many things. So you need to take many different approaches, but those are great observations. Yami, any other ones?
We have a question in the chat here by Hans from Pure Power. How does dynamic modeling align with systems innovation?
Are you talking about mathematical modeling or simulation, or do you want to elaborate on the kind of modeling you're talking about? Do you mean systems dynamics modeling or?
Systems dynamics modeling.
Yeah. So I mean, this second section here is about mapping, and you'd say systems dynamics modeling is kind of a subcategory of systems mapping. So systems mapping broadly is about mapping out the elements and interrelationships in the system. System dynamics is kind of a subset of that, which is a little bit more technical, a little bit more specific and scientific, should we say. So it definitely can be part of this. It would be part of that second part where we're really, system dynamic modeling is really trying to understand the system, right? So that's what we're doing in that kind of second part. So it can be part of this for sure, yeah.
I mean, the rationale behind the question is that I work in an industry where it's very much about facilities management operations. And by that in itself, that's a complex kind of industry, a part of construction. And some of the new types of technologies which are coming out are now adopting dynamic modeling capabilities. And that seems to be, let's say, the kind of opportunity, if you like, for the industry to adapt dynamic principles to changing from the linear thinking to the nonlinear approach. But I asked the question because, you know, as has been already spoken about here, this is a very huge area. And so when you're working in what is, you know, an oceanic pool of things that need to be covered, how do you then almost like connect those different models that are needed in each one of those individual sections? So even just from an awareness perspective, that is a huge kind of like subject in a distributed network of individual tacit experience and knowledge. And it's how you frame all of that to take those people on that journey.
Yep. Yeah. And yeah, as you said, it's a very broad area, many different methods and tools and so forth. But I think you're also kind of alluding to different people to approach it in different ways, and it'll make sense to them in different ways. You're kind of saying also for your particular area, this systems dynamic modeling makes sense. So they come in at that angle, and then maybe over time you expand their awareness of what they're approaching. You help them see, oh, you'll need a bit of this stuff, you'll need a bit of that, and you help them kind of build up that toolkit over time. So yes, I mean, if you're in the private sector or the public sector or not-for-profit, or you're going to speak to people in different ways, you know. So I think that's part of it. And then over time, trying to expand their kind of vocabulary and so forth.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Maybe we should stick on now for
Yeah.
time, should we? Yeah. Okay, maybe my screen will be okay now with my power. I might try and grab this. Here we are then. So dropping down here, yeah, kind of zooming in a little bit more on those methodologies and tools. Maybe go through this a little bit quicker so that we have good time in our breakout rooms. So yeah, methodology is a way of doing something essentially, right? An approach for doing something. And this is all about a non-linear approach, really. A linear approach is, as we talked about, the light bulb. You have a problem, your light's not working, and you have a solution to that. Go and change the light bulb, and you go and change it. It's very straightforward, and we take that thinking for a lot of things. You can extend it all the way to very complicated problems, right? But when it comes to these complex ones, you actually need something different. As we're talking about this stepping back and seeing that there's no one solution to a complex problem. You actually have to understand and intervene across multiple dimensions in the system, these intervention points. You have to operate in a coordinated way. And you have to work with multiple stakeholders because you're operating these very big complex systems. So yeah, if we just took the energy transition, right, there's no one solution to that, or decarbonizing our energy systems. There's no one solution to that. It will require us thinking broadly about the our energy systems, our grid, how we get electricity, and new ways of doing that. It will help us understanding. It will require that we understand the system that we currently have. It will require multiple intervention points, right? Not just one. And there's going to be multiple actors across all those intervention points. We have to understand those actors and how to work together. We have to also find high leverage points if we really want transformation, because these are very big systems. We're typically not going to have, resources just to bang the system and make it do what we want. We're going to have to actually act very strategically to find high leverage points, coordinate them in an effective way, work together with those stakeholders in a way that's speaking their language and wanting to be engaged in this, and then get them working together to co-learn and co-create a new system, this ecosystem thing. So that's a non-linear approach, and it's quite counterintuitive because this problem solution thing, we hear it everywhere, right? In business and design and engineering. This thing of looking back and trying to understand the system, multiple points and connecting those, working at high leverage, collaboration, ecosystems, that language is a bit new to us, and we've still got to learn this. So that's what we're arguing for, a kind of non-linear approach that is sometimes counterintuitive. And that's why we actually need that awareness thing, so that we surface people's assumption, help them recognize the linear approach is not going to, it got you here, but it's not going to get you to transformation. So we need to really take a different approach. And that's what this is about. And it's those 4 areas we laid out above, and there's many ideas and tools that have come together here. All the systems thinking stuff, but it's ultimately trying to get to, triple loop learning instead of just seeing what's going on in front of me, but understanding why it's like that, and how is my framing and my mental models and so forth shaping all of what I'm seeing and so forth. So it is arguing for a kind of broader, systems awareness, and move to this ecosystem thinking, get away from egocentric kind of thinking in individuals and organizations and teams to think more broadly about the system we're a part of. A lot of ideas there, and we'll be kind of exploring those as we go through. There's this mapping, as we talked about, to find high leverage points. So that's kind of what a map looks like, in case you've never seen one. It's a very simple one of a food system, and then thinking about those intervention points, the high leverage points. So you people are going to be exploring this as you go into your breakout rooms, why you think these different areas are important for systems change. But just to kind of recap on a few of them. And then, we need to think about transition design here and how that plays out. There are quite a few models, again, for this. This is one of them, quite popular with governments and research agencies. Multi-level perspective. It's trying to understand big landscape changes that are driving change here, like climate change, the incumbent regime that's already up and running, the new innovations coming up, bubbling up from the bottom here, and how may these landscape changes create windows of opportunity for those new innovations to bubble up and disrupt the incumbents to potentially create a new system. So that's an example of a transition model. There are many others. We'll look at these in about 3 or 4 weeks from now. And then finally, this ecosystem building concept, how we get a network of actors collaborating and so forth. We'll look at examples of all of these as we go forwards also, but ultimately trying to, going into an industry or a sector or wherever it is and seeing how fractured and segmented it is and thinking about how we get those connections and collaborations and alignments and synergies towards making this system more directed towards change and transformation. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of, what we're talking about when we say systems innovation and some of the different dimensions to it, why it is like this, right? Based upon those foundational things. I started off there about trying to work with complex systems and how they're different and so forth, needing a more holistic kind of innovation. And then this kind of a toolkit or set of models and methods to approach that. It's not the only one. There are many others. I might just take a quick break in case there's a question before I kind of show you how organizations approach this and different methods there.
There are no questions in the chat. You're on mute.
Have we covered these ones down here? Yeah. Okay. Great.
But I did put one for us to interact on the board if you think that's a good time to do that.
Yeah, where's that one?
Just
maybe I'll follow you.
just here. So we've been talking about the mindset shift and what needs to happen, like how current system, the way it's defined, the way it behaves, it needs to shift for a new way, new things to emerge, something that is more easy and less challenging and less wicked, like the one that we have. So just a question here to help you brainstorm around the different things that can happen, like in terms of innovation, that could shift the system behavior towards something that we are all interested in. So maybe you can grab a sticky and then just post your thoughts there. I will run the timer for about a minute or 2.
Do you want to clarify the question, Azra? What kind of innovation could shift how a system behaves?
We have been talking about different shifts that need to happen in the current way in which the system behaves and operates. So according to you, what is that shift that needs to happen? What is that innovation that should spark? So the current system is like disrupted and there's a new one that we are all seeking for. Okay, I'm just sharing the link with you in the chat. So it is not necessarily one system, just in case any system of your choice that clicks you. Okay, the time's up and I see some very interesting perspectives. Would any of you like to maybe unmute and give a small brief of what you wrote there or your idea.
Just listening to the overall conversation, it's almost as if you really have to identify and understand the individual elements of the system that you want to change or work on, because without actually understanding the components that make that up, you're not going to start anywhere, because it's those outliers that will come and bite you with regards to your initial thoughts. And I'm just thinking of my industry and knowing what I've had to go through to be able to attend this type of session. And I had to start with a blank sheet of paper about 7 years ago to start learning a different way of thinking. And so it's not something that happens overnight. And that's the bit which is the biggest challenge about educating people, about to start off with a blank sheet of paper and try and think of new ways of solving a problem. If you don't have that knowledge base of these tools, my industry, a wicked problem is not even on the horizon as a kind of like understanding. So yes,
I
might.
think, yeah, I think we all kind of a bit at some stage were like that. It's not like all of us were given this when our mums, made our bottles when we were 2 years old or when we went to school. So I think, I think many of us empathize with that scenario actually, in terms of having to find a long winding path just to get here. Never mind where we go from here. Yeah. Anyone else? Stan, you think you want to share?
Sure, I put a couple up there. One was, the ability to really truly identify those strategic leverage points and then really investing in that, right? And you may never know the outcome. Well, you'll know the outcome, but you may not be able to predict all of the outcomes. And then the other one I put up was really, I struggle with finding concrete ways in which we really get people to understand this is in their best interest to think this way, right? Like, how do we get people to really yeah, it's better for us to think this way than in the very individualistic and reductionist way that we are taught.
Yeah, yeah, good points.
Yeah.
Maybe just on the first one here quickly. I mean, both of them good points, but the first one, I guess we have to be careful not to rush into find these leverage points, don't we, Stan? In some sense, they're emerging out of a natural deep understanding of the system, aren't they? So I think sometimes everybody wants this idea of leverage points. Like who wouldn't? If you're the president or the CEO or anyone, you'd want to find leverage points. I guess the problem is we often kind of rush directly to them too early, and I guess what Donella Meadows and others would argue for is like, okay, let's really, as we said, step back and try and understand the system. And ultimately, those intervention points are going to merge out of a deep understanding of this. That's my experience, a deeper understanding, yeah.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, everybody else. I think Tobias had his hand raised, so maybe you can go.
Perfect. I just continue the line of thinking. First, I wrote like story listening approaches, anything that shows you what people are thinking, where they're at in their thinking, basically. And I really like this form of narrative interviews where you just don't come with your mental model and ask them 5 questions, but actually let them talk and really explore their story, where they're coming from. And then what Hans, you told us about as well, really resonates with me in that kind of way. And the other thing I'm really exploring right now for my own organization as well is like organizing for iterative learning, forming hypotheses, and really trying to guess where you are at and what kind of feedback you get. And then you organize hopefully projects in a different way than just planning for even for 3 months. When you don't plan for learning, I think then something is missing, because you don't get to the feedback really, and don't try to distribute cooperatively.
Great points, Tobias. Thanks for adding. And we are going to give you your space now for you to all your first point there, for you to all tell your own stories, right, when we go into the breakout rooms. So look forward to that conversation. Maybe we stay going to to just share, I'm going to share a little bit about, organizations out there and how they approach this. So this is what you might call the field of systems innovation, which is a relatively new area. The ideas of systems thinking have been around for many decades now, but the idea of kind of colliding them, intersecting them with this whole world of innovation and innovation ecosystems is a relatively new thing, just a couple of decades old now. And so the whole area is quite nascent, and we're working on developing that and trying to understand that. And these are just some of the organizations in and around that space. And we're going to look at some of their methodologies, how they approach this. So you can, well, won't go into this, but you can see Climate Kick there is one we will look at. It's the European Union's Innovation Agency for Addressing Climate Change. And they explicitly take a systems innovation approach. We've got others there we'll look at now to kind of unpack how they approach this and how it kind of intersects with the different dimensions I talked about there above. So let's jump into that. First one's theory U. So this is a gentleman called Otto Scharmer, and coming out of MIT in America, and he developed the Presencing Institute, which supports and develops this model for transformative change or systems change. It's very much, I'd kind of put it in the first quadrant of what we had. It's about personal transformation, or he puts it as, personal transformation for societal transformation. So it's kind of trying to change yourself really as a pathway to bring something new into the world. So a lot about the awareness section and all of this, but it starts on the left there where it says you're trying to download the past, which is essentially understand what exists already, including the systemic structures, the mental models, and so forth. And this is building upon the iceberg model. I'm not sure if we have the iceberg model up here. So here is the iceberg model, and it's unpacking a challenge on its different levels from the outcomes to the trends, to the systemic structures, mental models. And he's saying to get from the old paradigm to the new paradigm, you can't just walk across a bridge here. That'd be the linear kind of thinking. We can plan it all out. You've actually got to go all the way down this big scary place down here, swim past the sharks and so on, and unpack all these systemic structures and mental models. And he's saying you kind of download all of that, and then you try to shift the paradigm, let go of that, and think about what's the new paradigm here, and eventually merge back up here, thinking about new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at the world, new systemic structures, and ultimately arrive at a new paradigm. It's a long journey, but that's what he's considering with Theory U. It's an approach to systems change that's very much grounded, as he says, in transform yourself to transform, the world around you. And there's a lot of, I'm sure many of us resonate with that, right? It's definitely a part of it. We're not going to get change in the world without changing people, right? Or transformative change. So this is one approach to systems change. And you're welcome to look into that. It kind of lays it all out. There's a whole community around this, hubs around the world. And you'll find a link right there. Gonna flick through these relatively quickly. Second one is this is the Media Group, which is a non-for-profit in America, and it's a guidebook called Systems Practice by Rob Rixigliana and team, and this is more about coming from the mapping and finding leverage points approach. So many approaches to systems change come at it from the angle of mapping and finding leverage points. And that's quite core to the whole methodology here. And this one here from the Media Group is very much focused on that. It has 5 phases, or 5, because there's a 0 there, which is all about preparing your team for this journey ahead. Step 1 is gaining clarity, a deeper understanding of systems, and then building a map that captures the key forces and patterns driving the system's behavior. Step 2, finding those leverage places, exploring the most promising opportunities for engaging the system. 3, acting strategically designing and implementing approaches that exploit opportunities for leverage, and 4 is about sense making, iterating, adapting, and learning, and essentially going through the cycle again. So that's one point. It's one challenge, very much grounded in this systems maps. They look a bit like that, and you're trying to understand the system and then finding ways to intervene and designing interventions at those places you think will have high leverage. So that's that. There's a little case study there, much more on the board. There's actually a whole course, right, from Acumen systems practice here. So you're welcome to follow all of that. It's very good. There's a guidebook. You can see it there. There's even a link to the PDF. You can walk through it if you want a kind of off-the-shelf approach to systems change. I might recommend that. Our partners at Reimagine Futures use this for mapping out many systems and working on system change. So that's one approach. And it's very much grounded in that systems mapping leverage points approach. So here we'll stay going and look at Rio's Partners, which is a organization that facilitates systems change. And this one's very much grounded in facilitation. A global team of adaptive innovators, creative problem solvers, facilitators, social transformers, striving to make the world a more peaceful, just, and sustainable through advancing multi-stakeholder collaborations. So collaboration is core to this, and figuring out how to get a network of actors working together, because you're essentially dealing with people, really. This is about innovation in people, because it's people who manage and own these systems and different parts of the systems, and we've got to get them working together. So facilitation towards collaboration, towards people making sense of the system and working together is absolutely core to all of this. So they've been working for decades in facilitating multi-stakeholder collaborations, for example, in conflict zones like Colombia or in South Africa and many parts of the world now. Their methodology involves co-initiating, convening a strategic microcosm of the system, co-sensing, developing a shared understanding of the problematic situation, co-presencing. So this is about gaining a deeper understanding, clarifying strategic direction, and finding intervention points again, and co-creating, prototyping, and exploiting, prototyping and piloting interventions, and co-evolving. So certain similarities there, again, right? They've got phases around trying to make sense of the system, trying to understand it through mapping and intervention points, co-creating around those intervention points, and co-evolving this, institutionalizing it. So it's going to be sustaining and ongoing. So what we showed you up here is kind of drawing upon the commonalities that we find here as we see this sense making, this mapping and understanding, intervention points, and designing new innovations and developing those and sustaining them. Two final ones. One final one. We're going to hold the climate kick for future sessions, I think, Azra, aren't we? And yeah, I'll just jump into this one here, which is the Systemic Design Toolkit. You'll find it if you click there. So it's developed by NAMA in Belgium. And it's coming a bit more from the design kind of angle and how to enable transformative change in that context. Again, similar sorts of approaches. They have 7 stages there. The framing, listening, always starts with listening and trying to make sense of the system, and then understanding the system, envisioning the desired future, exploring possibility space, planning the change process, and fostering transition. So again, pretty similar. They're all trying to really address the same sort of challenge. So ultimately, they don't look massively different. There's definitely diversity, definitely different perspectives, but you'd always find you have to understand the system somehow, kind of map it out, find intervention points, do something together around those intervention points, and iterate and sustain this over time. So that's where our kind of what we talked about up here is coming from. Hopefully you're starting to see that. And it's what we're going to leave you people to work on, to hear your perspectives and opinions on this in our breakout, but just to kind of lay that out here more explicitly. We're going to really jump into it next time in a more coherent way. We're trying to help you make sense of this approach and kind of why we have these different dimensions, and how other organizations look at that. They do that here. We start with the framing, thinking systemically, helping people understand it as a system, mapping it out with intervention points, designing new innovations at those intervention points, and thinking about that change, transition from the old to the new, and ultimately interconnecting and enabling collaboration for that new set of innovations to develop and grow over time into the new system. It's not linear, as I kind of lay out there, and it's not the only approach. There's many others, as you saw. You're welcome to adopt whichever one you think's best. We're going to help you try and understand these different dimensions as you go through the next 5 weeks. We'll be jumping in more specifically to kind of this overall approach next week. But for now, Azra has some. Well, do we have any questions before we move on, or are we happy to?
We did have one question from George, who asked the difference between the School of Systems Change and Systems Innovation Network.
Yeah, so School of Systems Change, I know them well, Anna Burney and so forth. They're based here in London also. So they are a school. They teach people about systems change. Systems change is a little bit different from systems innovation, as the name implies. Systems innovation is more innovation focused, should we say. We could have a big conversation about that, but they teach people about systems change more through smaller cohorts and groups. That's more personal and often in person and a bit more in depth. We are quite a large network with almost 30,000 members. We produce a lot of educational content, but it's only part of what we do. We also help people connect. We help them co-create and so forth. So it's kind of a different approach. Yeah.
We have one question from Jones, saying how to hide circular user icons in boards. I don't know if I understand that correctly.
Yeah, maybe I'll pick that up afterwards and message you on that one. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. All right, Ezra, I'll hand it up to you.
Okay, so I will bring all of you to me here.
Do you want to grab the screen, maybe?
Yeah, just give me a minute. I hope you all can see my screen. So we are now here for the workshop part of the event. So the workshop will be conducted in all the events, which will run for about maybe an hour in every event. So we also want to use a challenge that we can keep using in all the events coming by, and see how it can really help us understand the whole process of systems change and innovation. So here up above, we have about 5 challenge statements that we came up with, and we would like you to vote on it. So we can pick one and move forward for the next 6 sessions. So I will run the timer for about maybe 2 minutes, so it gives you some time to read the challenge and also see which one you like the most. And we'll go with the one that's more interesting, or that's the most voted one there.
Only one dot, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I should have clarified that.
No, it's all interesting.
I think we have a winner, don't we, Azra? On the right.
Yeah. So, I'm just trying to count them. I just saw on the chat that somebody wanted me to put it on the urban development. Also just do it there. Okay. Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think the imagining education as a living system that has got more votes.
Okay, great. So I'll drop that in the different rooms. So we're gonna go into breakout rooms, right?
Yeah, before we go into the breakout rooms, I would like to help you understand how do we do this. I will maybe unlock it for you just.
Okay, I got it. Yeah.
So now all of you will be randomly assigned to different breakout rooms. Once you're in the breakout room, please make sure you nominate someone in the group as a facilitator so they can walk you through the different conversations, and then you will work on this canvas here. It has 4 sections, and we will go through these different dimensions and answer the questions as we go by. So you will go through systems thinking, then mapping, then transition design, and ecosystem building. You will ideate on, or you will collect your thoughts around the most voted on challenge, which is how might we reimagine education as living system that nurtures ability to think in interconnected and planetary ways. So you will begin with answering the question under systems thinking, and then you do the same for all the 3 other dimensions that we have in the clockwise direction. After you're done, so we have about 45 minutes. Maybe we will spend 30 minutes in the breakout, and after we are done with that, we come back into the main room, and the nominated facilitator can give us the insights for all the key takeaways from the discussions they had in their room. We have about 6 breakout rooms, so, and we're about 35 of us, so maybe there will be 7 or so in each breakout room, or 8 in each breakout room.
Right. Should I create those as well?
Yeah.
Okay. We also want someone to kind of work as a representative when you come back to share a few words about your learnings and so forth. Hopefully you all understand the flow. If you're not clear about different sections, you can also reference back, some of what I covered, but it's essentially all of what we discussed so far. So hopefully you're getting a sense of those different areas, and yeah, iterating clockwise, starting with the system thinking. So what, we have about 35 minutes or so. So yeah, maybe just less than 10 minutes on each section. That'd be great. Okay, gonna open the breakout rooms. You should see an option. Keep track of the number on your breakout room, and then go to the associated, board on the Miro. You'll see the numbers on the top right.
Okay, I see Robbie, you are in room 1. Do you want me to send you there, or can you also find the tab on the screen? Omar, are you here with us?
Anybody need help finding their room, or everybody okay?
I think you said she's joined from 2 accounts, so.
Okay.
Yeah. Or will I'm just checking for the room that you're in. You're in room 6. I think I can send you there.
Alfonso also.
Alfonso is already in the room.
Okay, everybody else okay for now?
I'm unable to send them to the rooms directly from here. You're on mute, Joseph.